my company, it's my money. I shouldn't have to make changes to it to meet the needs of the market, which are changing regularly, and which leads them to our door.
Even with our door there and they open it, they still want to tell us what the fuck to do. You're in the fucking Titanic, my friend. And you know that scene where you're the captain, he takes his hat off, and he makes the equivocal decision to sink with the Titanic? We tell them it's either you are saved, or the Titanic is saved, or both, or none. All right, guys, we're back for another podcast from Jacobs PC, business and bankruptcy attorneys. A very special guest today. We're known as business and bankruptcy attorneys, but you never saw the face behind the partner that runs the business, the bankruptcy and business department. And that'll be Robert Sasloff, partner at Jacobs PC in the in-court and out-of-court restructuring. Rob, say hello. What's going on?
Good morning. Hello, everybody out there. I'm glad to be here. I'm a new member to the firm. Only joined December of 23.
Nice.
I got to say, it's been a very interesting experience.
And we're going to talk about that experience. We're going to talk about. Here's what I want to talk about, and I want to be frank in our conversation today. We won't obviously mention names of clients and then temperaments and who they are, but let's talk about clients. Talk about their motivations. What motivates them to make decisions? And I want to talk about the thousandaires, the millionaires, and some of our billionaire clients. And, I'll let you pick which one you want to pick at. And
I'd like to talk about first what motivates them, because I think, especially as it relates to bankruptcy, oftentimes what motivates a client to go into bankruptcy is different than the clients when you're not in bankruptcy, when you're representing them in litigation, because they're concerned about different things. They're mostly concerned about the concept of, if they go into a bankruptcy, what does that do to their reputation?
Reputation is a big deal. And reputation is kind of like, you're either the cool kid in high school, and the cool kid in high school now kind of like has herpes and all the girls know about it. You know what I mean? Nobody wants to sleep with the guy. And that's a problem. So tell me about reputation. Talk to me.
Well, since I've been here at Jacobs PC, I've seen the clientele change dramatically, and in a good way. We've gotten clients that seem to be more well-heeled, which changes the motivation from the small guy who just cares about putting food on his table to the bigger guy who's concerned, if he's got $8 billion worth of projects, what's it going to do if one of his companies is seen as a failure? What is it going to do to his reputation if he's the principal of that failure? And what is a bankruptcy going to mean to him when he has to meet with the peers that are in his industry?
Yeah, but you know what? Decision making when you're a billionaire is different when decisions have to be made when you're stretched thin. And I want to define what stretched thin really means. Stretched thin means that you're a billionaire on paper, essentially, okay? You own Fifth Avenue, you own Madison Avenue. I mean, we're talking about blocks, 6th Avenue, 7th Avenue, and you're developing thousands of units, whether it be residential, commercial, but you can't afford a cup of coffee.
Well, that goes also to the definition of what bankrupt is.
What's the definition of bankruptcy?
For bankruptcy purposes, the definition of bankrupt is not having enough money to pay your bills as they come due. It doesn't mean you don't have money, but it just means that if something's due today, you don't have liquidity, or things are being stretched. We have clients who had contracts with third parties who have slowed down the payments, so they've got money coming in. They own lots of stuff. They just don't have what they need on a given day to pay a bill.
So let's talk about what bankrupt actually means. You touched on it, right? Can't pay your debts as they come due. But sometimes you have cash flow issues. That's why credit lines exist. But maybe what you're trying to say is, and we'll use a barometer for it, when you're in a down cycle or a recession, or a bear market they call it, you have to be, in order for it to be a bear market, the company has to not pay their debts as they come due for at least 2 quarters, right? So if you're not paying it for a quarter, that's okay. You're veering into second quarter, you still can't afford it. Third quarter comes around, you still can't afford it. I mean, at that point, you can't, in fact, pay your debts as they come due because in 2 quarters, a lot can change. You have service contracts, people you're taking care of. So,
And I find a problem with a lot of people, especially well-heeled people, is not knowing when to come to consult with a firm like ours that does commercial litigation, bankruptcy, inside or outside of bankruptcy. 3 quarters down the road can be sometimes too late, but sometimes it can be on time. I mean, I see the greatest success in being able to do bankruptcy cases and get out of chapter are for clients who have been proactive at looking at their inability to pay their bills as they come.
yeah, but
due.
who the hell pays attention to that? You have day in and the day out that you have to worry about. Nobody wants to think about being bankrupt.
Well, especially the big guys. That's the problem, I think.
I mean, let me tell you something about the big guys, okay? And we represent a lot of the big guys. And yeah, I'm upset. I'll tell you that much. I'm upset because these people, men and women, small businesses and big business and conglomerates, how can I explain it? When everything is good and they have a boatload of money, nobody looks at the accounting.
Correct.
But when things are bad, something happens in their decision-making calculus. Their decision maker, I just want to finish. Let me finish.
Sure.
Their decision maker doesn't solve for when they're just rich on paper. And what that does to them and what that does to us is we can't move forward on a decision because they've never made that type of a decision.
That was the point I was going to highlight, is that I have found in my experience that when things are good, people have a mindset. When things start going south, they don't know to quickly change their mindset and adapt their business. They want to continue to do business as they always have, and they take the position, it's my company, it's my money, I shouldn't have to make changes to it to meet the needs of the market, which are changing regularly. And those businessmen sometimes get themselves in trouble, which leads them to our door.
Yeah, but even with our door there and they open it, they still want to tell us what the fuck to do.
Yes, which is where our job is, and which I can say that I've been pleasantly surprised that coming to Jacobs PC, having worked with an experienced attorney before, coming here is that we are not afraid, the people who lead this firm and the firm itself, not afraid to tell the clients what we think they need to be doing and how to adapt. And they've got to listen to us if they want to be able to continue their wealth, to continue their success, and to find a way to minimize the damage that one failed business may have on what would otherwise be their business in full, such as if they lose one project, it doesn't bring down the rest of their business.
But that's what they want to do. They want to go down with the ship. You know what's a great example? You know how I explain things to the clients when they first come through the door? I tell them, look, you're in the fucking Titanic, my friend. And you know that scene where you're the captain, he takes his hat off, and he makes the equivocal decision to sink with the Titanic? We tell them it's either you are saved or the Titanic is saved, or both, or none. But the problem here is I think there's a psychological context here. I think that there's a very big ego involved. Their billionaires, millionaires, and even thousandaires are often businessmen, entrepreneurs. They're often seen as telling people what to do. They're executing their vision. So now they need an executor like us to help them.
But they do. That's the problem.
But they don't understand that.
They don't understand it, but you have to.
How do we make them understand that?
We beat them over the head with it.
You beat them over the head.
We talk to them regularly and often and tell them this is the decision. And we try and sound as if we also speak from experience and that we've seen these problems before. The nice thing is with some of these well-heeled clients we have these days, in the last year, we've seen a bunch of them. So we can talk to them about how we've helped one client previously and say, if you guys will change the way you're thinking and think more in the lines of a different way, then there's a path forward that doesn't involve the loss of these businesses that you've spent years building, the assets, and if you have to cut off a finger, at least you don't lose the hand.
You know what's interesting? It's like shopping for your wife or your significant other. You could always do that, all right? But you can never shop for yourself. You always feel like, Oh my God, I can't shop for myself. I can't shop for
I don't know
myself.
about you, but I can't shop for my wife. The most impossible
Well,
person to shop for.
I can shop for the wife. I can't shop for myself. But what I mean by that is when these entrepreneurs are caught between a rock and a hard place, they can't afford to pay their debts as they come due. They always think about everybody else and how everybody else is going to view them. What about my lender relationships? What about my service contracts? What about my vendors? And what I'm deathly afraid of is what about them? What about them? Why are they not making decisions on behalf of themselves or what's in the best interest of themselves? You know what it is? I think our clients, I ask our clients all the time, but I never get a straight answer. You have a project that is failing and you have to cut the cancer out. And they like have this iron grip that they don't want to fucking let it go.
Don't you think that's also a function of, in their mind, the loss of control? And
Absolutely.
what I think good lawyers, good advisors should be trying to bring back to the clients is a sense of control, that they can control their destiny if they are get themselves out of their own way, get their head out of their asses, and start viewing the problems as this is your problem. How are you going to fix it?
Well, here's what I've found, okay? When you have a dying project or a dying business, there's so much grief that piles on top of that shit that you don't even want to pay the attorney to fix it. You're in this place where you have to do something and you have to care about your business. And some entrepreneurs do. But some of them have decision paralysis. We have a client right now. I keep telling this client, you got to go bankrupt. You got to go bankrupt. And they're like, no, I'm going to get you a term sheet for my business. I'm going to get you investors for this business so you can come and save it. And you know what else I figured out? They rely on us too much too, which is an oxymoron, right? Like, of course they're going to rely on you, Leo. Of course they're going to rely on you, Jacobs PC. Of course they're going to rely on you, Rob. That's what you're there for. But we cannot always be the fail-safe. There's two parts here. There's management decisions. There's legal decisions. Our clients definitely know what the fuck the business problem is. They don't know the legal problems, and we help them with that.
I have seen in my experience, unfortunately, is that bankruptcy is a really difficult decision for a lot of entrepreneurs to make, and their mindset needs to be massaged and changed, and it requires us to be almost like their shrinks at times to help them understand that bankruptcy isn't the end-all be-all. It's actually a good business tool if used wisely for a way to save something that they built, that they want to keep.
Yeah, but here's what I'm going to be the client for a second. Say, okay, Rob, that all sounds really nice and dandy, but what about my Amex that's going to get clipped on my personal side? Wait, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how I'm going to be viewed by my community and going bankrupt. Let's talk about my lender relationships and filling out the business applications. Have you ever went bankrupt? I mean, that's what our clients are thinking about. They're not thinking about the way you're saying it. Oh, it's a new beginning. Oh, no, they're like Leo.
But our job is to get them to thinking that way, because yes, we've had recent cases, 2, 3 since I've been here, where the clients had long-term credit card relationships getting canceled because their companies have gone bankrupt, and they panic. They don't understand that, and it's just part of what happens in bankruptcy. And so we've got to talk them off the ledge and make them understand that this is a process, and you can either wallow in the misery of your failed business, or you can take your lumps and then move forward and create something new, because there's always a way to solve the problem. And the only way to not solve it is to ignore it and make believe it doesn't exist.
But are we like hospice? Do we like let people die nicely? Or what? Do we obviously get results for clients with structured cases?
I think that might be a good way of putting it, because sometimes we are. Bankruptcy, when I started, bankruptcies you saw a lot more reorganizations where you would see companies coming out as stronger, better, smaller companies. Now bankruptcies see a lot of sales where the companies that existed don't exist anymore, but their assets are being sold off. And that's just the nature of the practice and nature of the business, the nature of the value of property. And we have to make these clients understand that that aspect of it, where we're selling, can be good for them. Why? Because it can minimize their personal exposure. It frees up money for other businesses. If their businesses were being drained because one was supporting the next, we can stop that for them. And psychologically, I think part of our job is to teach them that this is a good tool, but it does require a lot of handling.
Yeah, but what happens here is they agree, Leo, this is a good tool, but I am petrified of taking this step. And there's a lot of anxiety that builds up. I mean, I had one of our clients, they were in Casa Cipriani's with me, sitting, and they had a fucking panic attack. And I was like, what's going on? He's like, I don't know. I have this investor. He's my white knight. He's going to save me. I don't know if that's going to come through. And the guy was visibly having a panic attack. I had another guy who almost choked on his food because this person was thinking about, oh my God, my refinances are going to come to fruition. How am I going to handle this with the wife? What am I going to tell my kids? The kids are also a problem because they're like, Dad, Mom, where's our legacy? Dad, Mom, you fucked up. Dad, Mom, this is a problem. And yeah, you have the bratty ones, but you also have the ones that are understanding of what's going on and are trying to help.
Bankruptcy has been around for a long time, and people, sometimes it's easier to find businesses or people who, it's very difficult, I should say, to find people who haven't gone through it. The stigma that what it once meant is not quite there anymore, but there are some people, obviously still, because they've never done it themselves, are going to have a reluctance about doing it and panic, even though they're successful. Not most bankruptcies don't necessarily deal with truly insolvent companies.
What do they deal with?
They, like I said, they deal with the idea of not having enough money at any given moment. So there's a difference, and the judges talk about it. Every time you go to a bankruptcy seminar, they're talking about the difference between an insolvent debtor and a not insolvent debtor, and that changes how a court looks at what needs to be done. Our job with these clients is to make them understand that you got money flowing in. Let's get into a bankruptcy if that's the vehicle we're suggesting to them, because that'll help them control their costs, which had probably gone crazy, because we don't have to pay old bills for a while. We only pay current bills. You get a little bit of time to try and figure things out. Maybe we can reorganize, or maybe we can sell and maximize the return to creditors so that you get to move on. Our goal at the end of the day is to help these people relieve the pressure that they feel they're under by having a business that is, in their view, failing. I mean, we've got a client now who thinks her family would be better without her, but without her in the family, there's no family. And so our job is always to help settle them down and to understand that there are resolutions that can be had for any business problem. This is business. It's not personal.
So look, we'll take a billionaire client of ours, okay? This person...
Which one?
Right. This person has a $1 billion portfolio and literally owns blocks of the West Side, East Side, downtown. They're really paper rich. This person has invested in one project, $200 million. This project is worth $35 million. This person is upside down by $65 million, if I'm doing my math correct.
Yep.
This person doesn't want to give up this property. You know what this person tells me? Leo, I'm not at fault. I'm not at fault. COVID, regulation, rising interest rates, changing laws. I was like, stop. We'll call him Elmer Fudd. I was like, Elmer, that is the exact reason that your company needs to go bankrupt, so that the asset may be sold, or the asset may be restructured, or you can find other investors. Because finding investors in a distressed environment is different than finding investors in a non-distressed environment. And he's going to ask me, Leo, what the fuck does that mean? Mm-hmm. Allow me to tell you what that means. Investors, and we've spoken to the ones that are not in distress, they're on the sidelines waiting for those individuals that are not saying, I'm going bankrupt, to go bankrupt. They are literally sitting there waiting like vultures in the desert for those people to go bankrupt. And then we tell our clients, you have 24% interest on your business. You have 24% interest on your personal property, on your credit cards, both personal maxed out and business maxed out. You need to go bankrupt.
Right. But look, our role for these people is to be their problem solver. And I think what we've been trying to do successfully lately is not just, I'm a bankruptcy attorney by practice. That's all I really pretty much do. I do out of courts beforehand because I use the threat of bankruptcy going in. But our role with the entire firm is with the litigation background, with your leading sometimes the charge on behalf of these clients, is to give them possibilities of what they could otherwise do, including in that quiver is the bankruptcy thing. And clients don't like the word bankruptcy, especially these guys. And why? They're concerned that, and you said it before, they have to write these things down on their loan applications, that there was a bankruptcy. There are other problems. There are other clients that we've had over the time, and Elmer Fudd may be one of them as well. Is if you file a bankruptcy in one case, there are consequences. There could be springing guarantees that would pop up out of nowhere that if they weren't in a bankruptcy, suddenly they are. We have a case presently right now where the clients were not getting sued except for deficiency, and the bank suddenly now wants to sue them on a payment of the entire obligation because the language of their guarantee was it's a springing guarantee that they were not liable for the whole, now they're liable for all. Our job is to present them a menu of things that we could provide to them. Bankruptcy, in our view, is a useful tool as long as we can psychologically move them to the point where, and it's not failure, as long as we can also get over the hurdle as to what are those consequences. But it takes a while, and I think the richer you are, the word bankrupt has a real negative connotation. It did when I started, even though people, including our current president, have been through bankruptcies for his corporations. Bankruptcy still isn't necessarily viewed only as a proper business tool. I think some successful businessmen, and I've had clients over the years that had like anywhere from 25 to 50 strip malls across the metropolitan area, who recognize that at the right moment, filing a bankruptcy is good for their business, because if they had negotiated leases at these malls when the market was high and suddenly the markets were changing and interest rates were changing, and if a tenant moves out, the new tenant in is not paying the same rent as the last one, suddenly they can't pay their mortgages. Well, if you can't negotiate with the bank, which is what you try, you threaten bankruptcy to get them to renegotiate, and if that doesn't work, you go into a bankruptcy and you
negotiate.
You negotiate. It's a useful tool, but I think a lot of people have trouble sometimes accepting it for that. And then if nothing else works, taking that next step isn't easy. But I think it can provide a stopgap. They just need to get comfortable with the concept.
You know what's interesting? Elmer Fudd, he's like, Leo, figure out a way I don't go bankrupt, but figure out a way I can keep and negotiate with the lender. And I always tell them, look, I'm Houdini. And yes, you can tie my hands behind my back and put cement on my shoes and throw me in the water. But send me the keys. Yeah. The key is sometimes bankruptcy. And if you decide that you don't want to go bankrupt, then allow me to negotiate the disposition of the asset. Allow me to say it.
Before you go there, we got a partner who always says, and it's right, and I think it's useful for you when you do these kinds of meetings with clients, you don't threaten bankruptcy unless you're really prepared to do it. And so with these clients, it's been sometimes, and Elmer Fudd included, I think, getting him to understand that while we are recommending that he necessarily go bankrupt, he's got to give us the ability to sort of use that tool in our negotiations, because if he doesn't, and he doesn't allow us to put that on the table, it does tie our hands.
Otherwise, we don't mind working with tied hands. We're great at escaping, but we need the keys. The whole point of a magic trick, if anybody wants to understand what the point of a magic trick is to make a elephant disappear in a room full of people. And the tool of bankruptcy sometimes can do that. But it has to be waved and it has to be wanded. And if we cannot wave it and we cannot wand it and we can't even utter it, then we do not have the keys to escape in the water, because a magic trick is just that. It's magic. It's not real. You need the keys, and the keys must exist. And Elmer Fudd and some of these thousandaires, millionaires, and billionaires don't understand that. You know what they do understand? I want to actually lock you up. I don't want to actually give you the keys and make you actually escape. And you know what happens? They end up paying for the consequences, because then you piss off a real big animal and a real big institution who I want to talk about, which is the lender. The lender has a lien on your property. The lender is getting their head kicked in by his investors or her investors, and they need to get and recover that asset. And you are emboldening that lender. If you're not working with that lender, if you're literally stuck in the decision paralysis, I'm not going to go bankrupt. I'm not going to negotiate the disposition of this asset. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait for another 2 years or 3 years. I'm going to pay Leo's firm or Jacobs PC their legal fees to basically buy time. But what that does without a strategy is embolden the lender to then actually go after your personal guarantee, get that judgment, and then advertise that they have the judgment against you. And that's what Elmer Fudd doesn't understand. Elmer Fudd doesn't understand that they're in default already, and that in the lender applications, I want to say this is very important. In those lender applications, Elmer Fudd is going to have to say, I've defaulted on my loan. I was part and parcel of a foreclosure. There was a UCC sale. The fact that you don't say that I've went bankrupt, not me personally, but the corporation, is, I believe, in my opinion, the same thing as having a foreclosure. Because you have to
I would
explain.
agree. If you're already in default and you're having to fill out a new application for a new loan, you're going to have to admit you were in default somewhere. So what's the difference in saying you went bankrupt? Because bankruptcy can oftentimes lead to a resolution that's both favorable for the bankrupt as well as the lender. The bankruptcy is intended to sort of almost provide somewhat of a level playing field for debtors to finally catch up with the lender's pre-petition exertion of pressure. But the lenders have a lot of rights in a bankruptcy case as well, which forces the debtor to sort of look at its problems and, instead of having decision paralysis, make some faster, smarter now decisions, because there's going to be somebody else deciding if that's what you've done.
Yeah, but you know what else the clients do? We have another billionaire client of ours. We'll call him Joe Johnson. And Joe owns a string of hotels, okay? Soho, West Side, East Side, very prominent figure. He made a couple of good moves that I like. He sold his soul a little bit to an investor, okay, for the opportunity for his legacy of his children not to die. So there's a few decisions that billionaires make, okay? Even thousandaires and even millionaires. But the billionaires, I want to let you know how they think, okay? I want to know what motivates them, what makes them kind of tick on one level. They're like, okay, my hotels are not making shit. They're literally on the teeter line. But I know, as a billionaire investor and doing this for 30, 40 years, that I'm in a down market. In an up market, I'm going to see the rains. But right now, I have to make the decision not to be greedy. I don't want to be greedy. So what did this Joe Johnson do? Owns a string of hotels. He sold 50% of the returns, 50%, meaning selling 50% of his legacy that this person has owned for 30 years, to an investor. What did he accomplish? Number one, he never went bankrupt. Joe Johnson never went bankrupt. Number two, he sold his rights to future proceeds in exchange of preserving that person's legacy. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not that selfish, okay? I like to dress well, I like to eat well, but I think for my children. I think for my wife, my family, my community. All right, I'm a community guy, I'm a family guy. And I like what this billionaire did. I like his mindset.
He's probably one of the few that does that, because in my experience, most of them don't. They can't get out of their own way. They make decisions that are
They
only
want
for
it now.
short term.
They want it now.
Yeah, they want to fix. And I think some of that, what our job is to explain to them that not every fix is quick, not every fix is easy, and we'd like them to all to think like, this gentleman of yours,
Joe Johnson,
to think bigger picture, think long term.
But Joe's miserable. Joe Johnson, he's miserable right now because what Joe thinks he did wrong,
that he lost half his business.
But we think about as bankruptcy lawyers as preserving the future.
Well, what we're supposed to do, what the bankruptcy court will tell you if you ever go to court and you listen to the judges when they talk about cases, bankruptcy is both intending to monetize a client's assets and preserve value. And what we try to bring to these clients is an understanding that if you can preserve value, it may not be 100% of whatever that value is, but if you preserve value, you've got something to deal with down the road, maybe to get more return, maybe to increase that value, take that piece that you do have and see if you can expand it. If you want to care about your children, you want to leave it to them, half of something is better than half of zero.
Let's talk. We talked about, that's obviously a great segue. We've spoken about those that don't understand. We've spoken about those that can preserve legacy. Now let's speak about my favorite people. Those that over leverage to save their businesses, even when they can't afford it.
Bane of my existence.
So let's talk about these guys. They're also billionaires. So what they'll do is they'll say, okay, I want to have my cake and I want to eat it too. Let's name this guy Ben Frazier. Okay, so Ben has an $100 million or $50 million textile business. Shit's not moving as well. It's not 1990. Okay, it's 2025. There's a lot of things that are changing, a lot of things that are moving and grooving, and the business is failing. But this person does not want to let this business go. They're married to this business. So what do? They go mortgage their house. They go borrow from their friends. And then they pay all of their debt obligations in bankruptcy or out of bankruptcy at 30% discounts, 50% discounts, 100% discounts, whatever it is. But then they're busting out the seams with debt payments. And guess what? They're back where they started in a second default after their reorganization.
I think at the end of the day, you can't help everybody make the right decisions. We can only help them make the decisions that may be best for them, even if it is just momentarily. If the client is wedded to his business, like this one is,
Ben, yeah, I guess.
Our job then is to ensure that what he does doesn't, in and among itself, ruin his opportunity.
But we're not financial managers. We're restructuring people. Restructuring.
But restructuring deals with numbers and manages. And so we've got to manage his expectation, manage his business so that when we're done, if it succeeds or fails, it has nothing. Number one, I don't want it to come back to us. And I want to make sure the client looks back and says that the services that we provided were what they wanted and asked for and got what they wanted. And now, even if they need to come back and do it again, it's not because they can say that they didn't think they were advised that, hey guys, stop. I mean, one thing I like to always tell clients is stop throwing good money after bad. But I can't stop them if that's what they really want to do. I don't like clients signing guarantees. I don't like clients borrowing new money.
But they have to. They're going to tell you I have to.
They say that, but they're not always right. And our job would be to then turn around and say to them, why don't we just sell it and get rid of the assets, I've got a client now, not Ben Frazier, but let's just call him Danny B. And he's had a business for 30 years. He's been in bankruptcy a couple of times, and he doesn't want to shut it down. It has nothing to do with the fact that it loses money every year, but he's got 20 employees that he wants to keep. But I've convinced him now, after the third time around, that you don't want to keep popping in $1 million every 3 years to cover the liabilities that the company should be covering, and it doesn't have the money to do it now. And he does have real reasons, real excuses. COVID quickly adversely impacted his business, and there's no doubt about it because it dealt with travel, and nobody was traveling. My job is to then slowly help direct him towards the understanding that he doesn't want to keep doing this again. You've done it before. Stop doing it. Let's just figure out a way to get this thing finished so that you can move on to whatever else you need to do. And if we could maximize the value so that creditors aren't harmed too badly, then I think that client will walk away saying this was the right decision.
Well, look, I appreciate that. I guess the last person I want to talk about is kind of like this guy, say Mike Deegan. What's the Mike Deegan? Where they'll commit financial fraud, where they'll commit some type of stealing, lying, cheating. We don't represent those type of people.
We try not to.
We try not to, and yes, people overburden themselves and they make promises that they can't keep. But there's an integral difference between fraudulent behavior, and I want to highlight this, and non-fraudulent behavior. Fraudulent behavior is very simple. What is textbook fraud? Very simple. You have a banana, or say not a banana, you have $10,000, and you tell Mike, cross the Brooklyn Bridge, and I'll give you $10,000. Then Mike asks, do you have the $10,000 in your hand right now as I'm crossing in order for you to give it to me? And you say yes. You've just made a current statement of material fact that induced Mike to cross the Brooklyn Bridge. Once he crosses the Brooklyn Bridge and you don't have it, what you've just done is committed fraud. It's not a break of a promise. The break of a promise is much different.
Sure.
Fraud is
knowing
that it's materially false, that you don't have the $10,000. You make that person cross the bridge, Mike, and then you tell Mike, "Oh, sorry, I don't got it." That is fraud. Now, people are going to say, "Well, people tell us all the time the aspect of the advent of getting." No, there's a difference between cash flow and you don't have it once you promise it. Okay, there's a difference between a breach of contract. Right? So fraud is not people that we want to represent in a bankruptcy context. But why, Robert? Because in a bankruptcy context, fraudsters are...
Well, they're pigs and they get slaughtered.
Why are they pigs and why do they get slaughtered? Tell me about that.
Because that's what happens. Pigs do get slaughtered. You can't be piggish. I mean, you lie to people, there are consequences, even in business. You defraud them, you're stealing their money. Even if it's not criminal, it's still something that doesn't allow you to get out of. In an individual capacity, if somebody defrauds a creditor and goes into a individual bankruptcy, those kind of claims will survive bankruptcy. So
really, you can't discharge. You can't
discharge fraud. You can't discharge malicious torts.
Tell me about the malicious torts. Tell me about. Give me some examples. We have a client right now.
Real tort where somebody is tort.
Talk about Dr. Talk about Dr. Dougal.
Well, I had a doctor client years ago who breached a contract with a medical practice where they were not supposed to work for another company, a competitor. And this client knowingly went out of their way to get a job with the competitor. And then this person went into bankruptcy. And the prior practice sued her as a malicious tort because they said that injury to their business by going to work for a competitor, taking business away from them, was an intentional infliction of
emotional distress,
of injury. They equated financial injury to a tort. And because it was done knowingly, they wanted to assert that it was malicious. And in a bankruptcy context, when most debtors, especially on the individual level, don't have money to pay their creditors, a claim that survives is a problem because now that claim's still going to have to get paid. When you go into bankruptcy and the creditor tries to sue to block the dischargeability of their debt, most debtors can't fight those lawsuits and you end up having to settle. So fraud in bankruptcy is never good. It's something that will not get discharged. It
will survive. It'll be with you forever.
And it could be with you for as long as somebody can get a judgment. So 10, 20 years if they can get a judgment.
And it's renewed in 20 years.
So bankruptcy isn't a useful tool for those people.
So you can't commit fraud and go bankrupt.
I wish I could say that clear cut. Plenty of people commit fraud and go bankrupt. The question is, can they get away with it? So we've got a couple of cases here in the office where in my opinion, a client committed fraud. I don't know for certain,
Yeah.
but they got their discharge. Why? Because there was no single creditor that had the
A
financial
dispute or-
wherewithal
yeah.
that they wanted to bring it to the bankruptcy court to have that claim survive. And then we've got another client who defrauded maybe 40 people, and there are 5 people that have come forward and said, we don't want this guy to get the discharge of our debt, and we're going to fight him. It sometimes depends upon how much money the other side has, but fraud is always messy. And it's not a good basis for you to consider, to believe that you're entitled to some sort of protection by the bankruptcy court and the bankruptcy code so that you can come out and do business again if you're going to do it
Right.
the same
And
way.
a lot of people do ask us that, and we're like, guys, we don't condone that behavior. We don't represent fraudsters, liars, stealers, and cheaters. But yes, there are people that are overburdened, debt laden, made promises they couldn't keep. But there's a very stark contrast between a fraudster and someone that just did bad business deals.
And what we see in our practice as lawyers in general is that people who are aggrieved want to say everything's a fraud.
Which is not.
Which is not. So there are people who make, one of the things that I think one of the atoms that I learned is that oftentimes clients are one of 3 things: are either stupid or thieves or a combination thereof.
Yeah.
There are very few clients that I would say are smart businessmen who come to us to help them restructure debt because they know it's a business decision. The majority of our clients have made bad decisions or evil bad decisions, and they want us to come try and fix it.
One thing I'll tell you about timing. Let's talk about timing. It's very crucial about timing because clients come to us, and we'll have a billionaire client. Let's name this person Stephanie. Okay, Stephanie comes to us. She has a gold and mining business. All right, and this person is making $200, $300 million a year. Gold prices are down. Diamonds are, everybody's getting the fake diamonds now, and she has real diamonds. So the market's down, 60%, 70% down. Can't pay. The concern they have is, I don't want to let go of my business yet. Leo, can you buy me, or can your firm buy me 4 quarters of time or 5 quarters of time? We employ out-of-court restructuring. Our famous CPOR 5240 gets you 60 to 90 days. Our, litigation or stays in appeals court gets you another 60 to 90. We could move the needle. But what I found is the more time goes on, the less opportunity there comes. Why? Because what eats in the way of more time is interest and legal fees. You think interest at 24% is high? Wait till you see a fucking legal bill for restructuring. That's like $4,000, 4,000% interest a month.
I think I have found over time that time isn't really the best thing for a lot of these people in this
And they
service.
believe that
don't-
it is.
Yeah, well,
They believe that it is.
I think our job is oftentimes to try and show them that it's not. We can buy time. If
We could.
something's not in
We're very good at
bankruptcy
that. We're very good at that.
litigation, good lawyers
Good
can
lawyers, yeah.
stall most litigations a year or two, especially in state
Yes,
court.
yes,
Federal
yes.
court may move a little faster. In bankruptcy, depending upon what kind of debtor it is,
You're in and out.
things move much quicker than they used to. Single asset real estate cases, which are where you own a single building that derives all its income from the project or the rents it receives, have a 90-day window where you've got to start doing stuff. So clients if they want time, need to be sometimes re-educated to show that time isn't really what you need. What you need is a answer to your solution and a way within which a mechanism to make that answer happen. And I think that's what we try and bring to our clients, are not just the potential answers, but a way to get that action done.
I want to talk about the last thing, and then we can finish. I want to talk about the liars, stealers, and cheaters that lie, steal, and cheat to themselves. Let me explain what that means. We'll name this person Lenny.
one of my closest friends.
Lenny has a business portfolio of numerous businesses and has real estate and patents. And one patent of his is worth $500 million. And what Lenny does to himself is he refuses to sell his assets to pay for his legal bills and his living expenses. That's how much of an ego Lenny has. To then say he has no money. Whilst he can sell that IP for $500 million and resolve all his problems. I want to say something to the world. Don't be a dickhead and do that. If you need to let go a piece of your wealth, which can likely be, we have clients that have Picassos, they have Van Goghs, they have Matisse, they have all the things you ever wanted. They don't want to let those things go. So they're not really broke, Robert.
But they've spent their lives
accumulating the shit.
Right, and they don't want to let go of it to save
what
business.
the fuck?
But I don't know if I look. On one hand, I agree with them where I don't want to say to them, sell a valuable personal asset of yours to save your business.
So why
to me,
you
I would
calling us?
recommend to them get rid of the business, keep the asset.
Well, you know
figure out a way
what?
to protect themselves.
Apparently, that's their choice, right?
Yes.
Sell your Matisse, sell your Andy Warhol, or try to reorganize your business. But what I don't appreciate about some of the clients out in the world in bankruptcy really makes my skin crawl, man, is they don't believe in the value of shedding their old skin to come into their new skin. I want to tell something to the people, okay?
Sure.
You can't become a new person by keeping your own skin. What got you to the top of the mountain is different than what's going to make you stay there. And sometimes you got to go down. But when you're going down, you got to be a little lighter in your low.
But people don't come to us to tell them to do that. They have to come to that conclusion. Our job as lawyers, more often than not, is to assist them in even bad decision making, if that's what they're going to do. And
that's fucked up.
I do hesitate sometimes to tell a client to take their own personal assets and dump it into a failed business because I hate putting more good money after bad. But I think if some people wanted to keep something, they have to take the leap and decide whether or not they're going to put the money
But don't
in.
pretend you're fucking broke.
Well, but that's what rich people do.
That's what broke billionaires do.
Yes. And, thankfully they still have enough money more often than not to pay us, which I
Is
want them
good.
to come to us. And then it's our job to help steer them in the right direction, change their mindsets, know that
But I
what
get
we can
confused.
do,
But I
we
get
can bring
confused.
tools to them to maybe fix some of these
I
problems.
get confused because if it's your business, if it's your piece of property, and you're not willing to let go of something that has been for something that can grow, then why do you need someone like us?
Well, they need someone like us because at the end of the day, somewhere along the road, a realization is going to come into place that they need a way out. And our job is to help them with the way out. I try to step back from clients in my experience.
You've
I
helped
don't
me
want
with
to be,
that. Well,
I
you've
don't want to
helped me with
be involved in their decision making on how to live their lives. I want to be involved in the decision making on how to save their businesses.
Can we talk about that one doctor that we represent?
Sure.
And for the audience, we'll obviously not mention this person's name or what he does. We'll name him a physiatrist so that nobody can obviously know who he is. So he's a physiatrist, not really a physiatrist, but he's a physiatrist. And owns a 40,000 square foot establishment in Midtown, surgical facility, 15 types of surgeries, gastroenterology, urology, pathology, everything. He calls us, wanted to commit suicide. And here is the remarkable truth about bankruptcy. Bankruptcy steers you into involuntary thoughts. Now think about that for a second. There's voluntary thoughts and there's involuntary thoughts. Now, I have a cognitive psychology degree from Queens. So I've studied this a bit, okay? I've studied heroin and cocaine addiction in rats and parrots. Way back.
I have a history degree from the University of Georgia. Very different background.
But it's been instructive in my delegation of my discussions with my clients. And voluntary thoughts are, I want to go to the bathroom. I'd like to eat. Involuntary thoughts are those thoughts you cannot control. But involuntary thoughts really truly come about when the mind is looking for a way out. And the most horrifying way to go is to kill yourself.
Sure. Which I think
And
why our job, including with this client, is to
well, a couple of them,
get him to
a
start
few of them.
thinking again about life, but also about this is business. Business doesn't mean the end of life. And you can, if you built a successful business, you probably have the mental acuity to be able to rebuild a successful business, but you've got to know when to pull the trigger, bury the other one so that it doesn't stay with you forever. If this doctor, for example, can't let go of the business he has, understanding that there are debts that he'll never be able to repay, and he has to then restructure his business in his mind by maybe doing it with a partnership, doing it with a new company, doing it as an employee, he can get back on his feet. But he can't think this is the end of the world because his business failed. I mean, plenty of people do, and plenty of people, we hear stories, especially in New York City, about people jumping off buildings all the time because they don't see the way out. I think if they come to us like this doctor did, and I think what we certainly did
And others as well.
Yeah, what we did at the beginning of this doctor and others as well is to get them to sort of take the step back, take a deep breath, and realize that this is a business that needs to be wound down properly so that they can, and what does bankruptcy say all the time that's supposed to be? It's a fresh start. Our job is to help them see that there's the possibility of the fresh start, whether it's an out-of-court restructuring, whether it's trying to take litigation so that we can get to a bargaining, to a table to sit down and make a settlement, or whether it's through a bankruptcy where we either restructure the debt or sell the debt. We've given them the opportunity to get a fresh start and start over again and build something back. And the better clients, the better businessmen always want to be building something new, and we'll try and do it again.
So look, suicide is a real thing, man, and negative thoughts are a real thing. We always counsel our clients to sometimes, independently seek psychiatric counseling, which is a thing. It's a thing. You don't have to be afraid to seek that counseling. It's a shitty way to really drown out a pocket, but it needs to be said because it's true. A lot of our clients have that.
I know it very true. Before I came here, I had a case. A client came to us. He was in distress. He had a family business that had been in the manufacturing of a product for 75 years. He was the last child of this business that was supposedly going to run the company. He needed to go into bankruptcy, and we put it into bankruptcy. He had a white knight that was going to help him save the company. And what happened the next day? Get a phone call. He killed himself in the office. Now, for me, my first thought was, what the fuck am I going to do with the bankruptcy? Because I don't have a client. But my second thought was, all right, what is this guy's family going to do? And we had to try and reach out to make sure they were all okay and tell them, look, let us do something with the bankruptcy to see if we can get you some money out of it, because there was still value there. Not that we did something great, but it was like, these clients sometimes can't separate themselves from the fact that they have a failed business.
And they need to know that. The people need to know that you need to separate yourself from the business, from the money. And I understand it's intertwined. I've been in the business, Leo, for 30, 40 years. This is all that I know. I only know how to make jelly donuts, and I can't make jelly donuts. That means I don't exist. That's not true. Seek counseling, speak with your attorneys, speak with your psychiatrist and your psychologist. Look, Robert, I want to thank you for coming on to the show today. I had a tremendous time with you speaking about these concepts and really reflecting about what we carry and what our clients carry.
I'm happy to join. It's been a very interesting experience being here for a year after working somewhere else for a long time. I'm enjoying what I'm doing again. And I think what we at Jacobs PC, what we are trying to create is a full service firm that can bring a lot of good value to our clients. And talking about it has been fun.
While confronting the impossible.